All right. Good evening, Paradise Valley. And I have to say that when I drove up here, this is the first time I've been in this area, I cannot believe how beautiful the scenery was. And it's no wonder that the town got its name, Paradise Valley. Tonight, we have a Let's Talk Alberta sponsored event where the goal is to provide a safe and welcoming environment for people in Alberta to discuss. The name says it all, Let's Talk, and we welcome, and we hope that we will have people who will be of differing views so that we can hear from each other, we can ask questions, and just move the conversation in a respectful manner. We're happy that you've taken the time out to come tonight. I know it's such a beautiful night, and it's not been too many of those lately, so thank you for coming out. We're going to just do a few little housekeeping items. Bathrooms are out the back where, on the left of where you came in at the main entrance. There's an emergency exit, of course, where you came in, and there's one out through here. If you haven't had any refreshments, please go and have some iced tea. There's merchandise tables at the back. There's also a sign-up table where you can leave your name and your contact information. And if we're ever back in this area and you want to be notified, just leave your name, your town, and either a phone number or an email, and we'll let you know. We have trifolds at the back, and you're welcome to take 1, 2, 10, whatever you think you would like. I think that's it for that. Tonight we have 2 speakers. We invite people from all different kinds of views. We don't always get a diversity. Sometimes we do. Tonight we have well, you'll hear them later. So what we're asking is when they are presenting their speech or their talk, that everybody would hold their questions, hold their comments until later. We're going to have the 2 speakers speak, a 5-minute break, and then we'll go into a question and answer period. And what we'll do is we'll have a mic set up on one side or the other, and you can come up to the mic and you can share your question, your comment, your ideas, anything you would like. How many of you here tonight have never attended a meeting like this? Oh, wow, good. Thank you for coming. I think what I will do is I'm going to introduce our first speaker, and I'm only beginning to know Emmett. This is my second time meeting him. And although Emmett's field is engineering, where his passion lies is to get people involved in their community politics, their local politics, provincial politics, federal politics, and have, like we all complain, but not all of us get involved. And so that's what Emmett's passion is, to encourage people to get involved and just attend meetings, attend whatever political party that you're a part of, go to their meetings and express your voice so that all Alberta can get a say in what goes on. So, Emmett, I'm going to ask you to come up.
I'm really glad to hear that there's a balance of people coming to this meeting that have differing opinions, because we need to start talking again. The reason why there's been a lot of anger and hate is because we're no longer seeing each other for the humanity in the other side, no matter which way we come from. And if you're expecting me to talk about technical benefits about why it's better to stay in Alberta or leave Alberta, I invite you to do your own research, visit websites. That stuff I can't really share within a 15-minute presentation. But what I can do is talk about how we can start talking again and start to come to the root issues of why we're having these questions in the first place and what we can do to heal as communities and as a culture. So, like Andrew Breitbart said, politics is downstream from culture. And to talk about Alberta independence, we need to talk about our culture. And actually, before I start, I think we need to think about those that are involved in this movement, that are putting in the work, but have also experienced loss in their lives. I'm talking about the passing of the wife of Jeffrey Rath and the passing of freedomcalendar.net, Max's grandmother. We all do this for the ones we love, and you might have your own opinions about some people that lead this movement, but we're all human, and we're doing what we believe in for the ones we love. So we're here in this room to talk about a referendum, to have a referendum. And I think it's an interesting concept because it's kind of a breakup from a relationship. And I don't remember asking my girlfriend for permission to ask if I could break up with her. It's just, the concept is so foreign to me. We kind of just agreed it was over, got our things together, and move on. But here we are in this convoluted situation that we have to try and navigate. And no one's particularly happy about it, and it's just the circumstances we have to work with. Just like when you play chess or Go, you've got a board set, you've got your pieces. These are the circumstances we have to work with right now. Sorry, I lost track here of my notes. So like I said, societies are built on culture and the collective will of people, and laws and judgments all come downstream of this. I think one of the reasons why we're having such convoluted questions is because our culture is no longer cohesive. Nobody's talking, so we're not able to establish a consensus, and that's why we are all seemingly lost right now in what we actually want as Albertans and even as Canadians. And since the pandemic, nobody's been talking. We've become very tribal, like jabbed, unjabbed, how many jabs, you're killing grandmother. And rather than try to see why the other person did what they did, look at the person and what motivated to do that. Because people don't generally do things with ill intent. They see an ethic or benefit to what they've done, and sometimes there's different ethics that we need to consider. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But healthy discussion does require an understanding. And we can agree on problems, but solutions is often where we find differences. It is possible to agree to disagree without thinking the other person is evil. Like, I went to college, I went to university, a lot of my friends are on the left, some of them are on the right. I know a guy that he's actually employed as a clerk in the Alberta legislature. He's a staunch advocate for the NDP, and we actually meet for coffee once every 3 or 4 months just to understand what's going on in his mind. We'll talk about certain problems like affordability, laws, and we talk about our solutions. And sometimes they're different solutions, but usually we're agreeing on the same problems. And it comes down to the approach that the left might take or the right might take. But we're able to understand that we both agree that something needs changed and something needs fixed. And I consider that a healthy relationship, being able to talk with someone on the other side. But for the most part, we are not talking anymore. And as a society, because of that, we don't know what we really want, and we are lost. Leaving Canada won't fix our problems, nor will remaining, because Alberta's independence question isn't the root problem. It's a symptom of the problem. It's not an issue with presidents, ministers, or lines on a map. Those are downstream consequences from culture. The real problem, it's you and it's me. Many of us only vote once every 4 years. That's like 2 hours out of our day every 4 years. Percentage-wise, that's 0.006% participation in our society, which is not a passing grade, and we wonder why things are crumbling around us, why our society is failing. And the worst part was that we believed that we shouldn't even be talking politics with people. We totally checked out. And now we wonder why we have Ottawa and Edmonton making disastrous, tyrannical central plans, and why their bad policies and bad administrations have priced us all out of living affordable lives. It's because we let them. And if you're listening to this online, you know something has to be done. And if you're in this room, you know you can do something because you've showed up, you checked in, you are here. And not only are you ready to listen, you're ready to talk. So let's talk Alberta, and let's talk Canada. So I personally do lean towards independence. I believe an independent Alberta will be more affordable for Albertans. And the reason I think that is because Alberta's GDP per capita is above the Canadian average. Because we're forced into this pool of averages through equalization and other indirect redistributions of wealth, Alberta is forced into an average reward. We give above average contribution per capita confederation, but we're getting an average reward. And I think that's where we start to discover that there is an Albertan culture and there is a Canadian culture, and they are starting to become distinct cultures. Many Canadians, for example, support fiscal equity. That's a quality of outcome, no matter how much value a province or a person brings to the table. And socially, that manifests as intersectionality. Many Canadians believe that a demographic of people should be identified, uplifted, or repressed to enforce an equality of outcomes, a social equity. These are the modern ethics that many Canadians hold, and those Canadians believe that it is a good thing. Ethics are not necessarily a cohesive element within a culture. People have different values, and we need to understand them. Now, for Albertans, I think many Albertans believe in equality of opportunity, and that outcomes should not be tampered with. The opportunity to succeed without penalty, and the opportunity to fail and learn, and rebuild with more resilience. And that's where many Albertans become different from many Canadians. That's where we have this schism or divide. So which ethic is the right one? Equity or opportunity? I think this is a common question in times of scarcity. And I think it's okay to ask this question, and I don't think you should be told otherwise. And I believe that the opportunity to fail is sacred and the only way for true success because it breeds evolution. You have to fail to learn. And forcing us all to be part of the same collective, economically tethered to each other, can bring us all down rather than one. So, hypothetically speaking, if the ship of Canada is going down economically, should Alberta go down with it? But if Alberta separates, are we just prolonging our own decline? And I think these are pretty important questions, but once again, they're about the symptoms and not the root of the problem. Again, the problem is that you and I abandoned society. The reason why we've got politicians doing things we disagree with, having bad policies, bloated administrations, decreased affordability, is because you and I have not been getting involved to hold them accountable. And that is an issue that the left or the right can agree on. We let others dictate our policies and teach our kids, and we gave our responsibilities away and now discovered that our rights have been given up. And that's because rights and responsibilities, they're together, they're one and the same. So if you really want to take back your rights and your access to affordability, you need to retake your responsibilities. And this is bigger than the Alberta question, which stems from it. Ask yourselves this: are you willing to do what it takes to get involved? Will you do more than just vote once every 4 years? And will you be willing to talk at the dinner tables and at the public squares and start to influence your town, the province, or even the country? There's lots that can be done, and it all starts with you. So no matter which way this referendum to have a referendum goes, there are critical underlying issues that must be talked about. So let's talk. Without discussion, there's no awareness, and without awareness, we are all lost. Tyranny will get as bad as we let it. Its greatest ally is our fear, and it needs people of good conscience to remain silent. So what do we need to do? I think we all need to wake up, speak up, and show up. And let's start talking again. Now, I'll be inviting Sheane to speak up soon. Sheane is a very good knowledge of wealth. He's got a lot of good technical understanding and historical understanding about the grievances that Alberta has about Canada. And he will bring that to the table. So I'd like to introduce Sheane here soon.
As Emmett said, I'm going to discuss the historical relationship between Ottawa and what is now known as Alberta and Saskatchewan. From the 1880s to about 1903, 1904, there was a huge American settler movement within the territories. You had huge communities popping up all over what is now Alberta and Saskatchewan that were mainly American settlers. How many here have ever heard of the little spot on the map called USONA? There's a few. I live 6 miles from USONA. Does anybody know what USONA stands for? The United States of North America. At one time, it was a community of about 500 people. Now it's a community of about 8 people that live in the little town. How many people here have heard of Rimbey? Almost everybody has heard of Rimbey. Its original name was Kansas Ridge. The city of Airdrie was Yankee Valley. With all these American settlers coming in, there was a push among them to annex and become part of the United States. And this made Ottawa very, very nervous, and was one of the main reasons why they cut Alberta and Saskatchewan out of the territories, because it's a lot easier to annex a territory than it is to annex a province. In 1903, on the steps of the Manitoba legislature, Sir Clifford Sifton made the following statement: "We desire, and all Canadian patriots desire, that the great trade of the prairies shall go to enrich our people to the east, to build up our factories and our places of work, and in every legitimate way to our prosperity." Now, why do we care what some guy said on the steps of the Manitoba legislature 103 years ago? Well, Sir Clifford Sifton was the main author of the Alberta and Saskatchewan Acts. How many here have had a chance to ever read the Alberta Act? I would encourage you to go to the Government of Alberta website, download a copy of the Alberta Act. It's only a few pages long, and it is eye-opening because in there they gave Alberta and Saskatchewan the names of a province, but the rights and responsibilities of a territory. And we have been fighting ever since to get back what is rightfully ours as a province. On September 5th, 1905, the Alberta Act was enacted, as well as the Saskatchewan Act. And with doing that, Alberta and Saskatchewan became the only 2 provinces within Confederation that were brought in by acts of legislation rather than by negotiation. Every other province negotiated their way into Confederation. Alberta and Saskatchewan were legislated into existence. In 1913, the Railroad Act amendments were brought in by Ottawa. What that did is it made it illegal for regional railways to transport across provincial boundaries. So if you were loading, let's say in Stettler, you would load your grain, it would hit the Saskatchewan border, and then it would have to be offloaded and reloaded onto the Saskatchewan carrier. At the Manitoba border, the same thing. Ontario border, same thing. Well, this made it very hard for the regional railways to make a living. And by 1939, the majority of them had gone out of business. In 1946, all of their assets were bought up by a brand new company that we now know of as Canadian National Railways. Now, when they brought that in, they made all of Eastern Canadian regional railways exempt. So it only applied to Western Canadian railways. In 1930, the Natural Resources Transfer Agreement was signed between all the provinces and Ottawa. And what that did is it transferred all of the natural resources to the provinces. At the time of the issuing of the transfer agreement, Ottawa said that this applied to all the provinces, but they were not giving those full rights to Alberta or Saskatchewan. On December 11th, 1931, the King signed into being the Statute of Westminster. And what the Statute of Westminster did is it gave sovereignty over land and resources to the people in care of the provinces. Now, what does that actually mean? That means that there is actually no federal land in any province in this country. It belongs to the provinces, and if we were to enforce this, we would not have had Jasper happen, because we could have done the land management and taken care of the forest, unlike the federal government that does not manage the forests very well. And even if the fire had occurred, our firefighters could have gone across and helped fight the fire in the town. 1935, a new marketing board was formed. And this marketing board was supposed to make it easier for farmers to sell their grain at a fair price. This was the Canada Wheat Board, and it was originally voluntary, but it was originally brought in as a way for the federal government to seize Western Canadian grain and ship it east. We were in the middle of the Depression, and they needed grain in the east, and they came in and literally seized grain from the farmers out west. In 1946, it no longer was voluntary, it became mandatory, and it was made mandatory only for Western Canadian farmers. So let's say you want to sell your grain to the United States, and I'm an Ontario farmer. To do so, I just pull up to my bin, load my grain into my truck, and drive down across the border and sell my grain. If I lived west of the Manitoba border, I would pull up to my bin, load my truck, pull into the local elevator, offload my grain, pull around to the far side of the elevator, reload it, and pay a penalty, but a fee to the Canada Wheat Board in order to be able to sell it to the States. Now, this stayed in effect until 2012, and it is thanks to first off, all the farmers were tired of it, and they let Ottawa know. But if it hadn't been for 13 farmers that became known as the Dirty Dozen that were willing to go to jail for it, and they spent between 6 months and a year in jail each in order to get them to repeal the Canada Wheat Board Act. In 1947, we had just discovered our vast resources in this province, our vast reserves of oil. We had found oil before, but not to the extent that we now knew what it would be. And right away, Ottawa brought in federal control of oil pricing and pipelines. And this stayed in effect until 1950. and they finally repealed it. But they set our prices. We could not go by world market. We had to go by what Ottawa said that we could sell our oil for. How many in this room can remember the great flag debate of 1965? There's a few. Didn't want to admit your age. In 1965, our then Prime Minister, Lester B. Pearson, decided that we should have a flag in Canada that represented the people from coast to coast. So the red maple leaf, the two bars on the side represent the oceans, and the maple leaf in the center is to represent the people. Well, John Diefenbaker stood up in the House of Commons and said, why are you not making it something like the Manitoba maple? Because the sugar maple is only found in Eastern Canada. Well, this ticked off Lester B. Pearson, and he forced closure on the bill. And when it went to vote, not a single Western Canadian MP voted for the maple leaf flag. The sentiment in the West was so hostile towards that flag that in 1967, during the centennial, many cities and towns refused to fly the maple leaf. Instead, they flew our other official flag, which most people don't even realize that the red ensign is still an official flag of Canada, but they chose to fly the red ensign flag. But by the time I started school in the 1970s, it had been memory hold. Nobody even remembered it. It wasn't until I was researching years later that I discovered how much hostility there had been in the West over that flag. In 1973, the federal government brought in the oil export taxation policies, and Alberta's oil profits were capped. Now, we were told that in the 1970s we had an oil crisis, that we had an oil shortage. Well, we had a policy shortage is what we had. Because if you were an oil company and you had a quota of 100,000 barrels, and you were to produce 101,000 barrels, and all the profit for anything over that 100,000 went straight to Ottawa, would you want to pull any extra oil out of the ground? It's because it still costs you money and you're not allowed to make a profit on it. Why would you pull it out of the ground? Now, this stayed in effect for 18 months, and our then Premier, Peter Lougheed, fought tooth and nail with the federal government to get it repealed. And finally, in 1974, it was repealed. But they weren't done with us on that issue yet, because just 6 years later, they brought in the National Energy Program. Now, the National Energy Program had everything in it from the 1973-74 bill, with the addition that all of our oil had to be given priority to sell to the East. And we did not set our price that we could sell to the East at. So they set the prices, and this stayed in effect until 1988. And in 1988, then Prime Minister Brian Mulroney repealed the National Energy Program. And he did it during an election year, and he made it like he was doing something for the West. While in reality, oil prices had dropped so low that it was costing more to administer the program than they were getting out of it. So that was the main reason that they got rid of the National Energy Program. In the 1980s and 1990s, we first had the repatriation of the Canadian Constitution in 1982. And then we had the first Quebec referendum. And in 95, we had the second Quebec referendum. Now, the second Quebec referendum actually helped us out here in the West, because after it was done in 1998, the government went to the Supreme Court of Canada and said, is it actually possible for a province to cede from Confederation? The Supreme Court of Canada came back and said, yes, it is, but these are the steps that need to be taken to do so. So the government went back and they drafted a bill that had all of the requirements of the Supreme Court in it, and that became known as the Clarity Act. And that is what is being used for us to move forward in our bid to become independent. We'll jump forward to 2012. And Bill C-38, the Jobs, Growth, and Prosperity Act, came into being, which gave Ottawa complete control over Alberta's projects. That meant that we could not put a pipeline in the ground. We could not build a new highway. We could not build a high-rise in the city without federal approval. In 2016, we got the federal carbon pricing, which, as we know, has deeply affected the oil industry and has caused our oil industry to go down over. 2019, we got Bill C-69, the No More Pipelines Act, and Bill C-48, the tanker ban off the West Coast, came into being. Now, last fall, our Premier signed an MOU with the Prime Minister to remove those 4 items. Within 1 week of that MOU being signed, Parliament met and voted it down. So those are all in effect still to this day. Now we move to present day. Bill C-8 just received royal assent. Bill C-9 just received royal assent. And Bill C-22 is working its way through the House of Commons at this point. Bill C-8 is the Internet censorship law. And it is scary in that it only takes the minister's signature to wipe you off of the internet. Now, whether they use it that way, who knows? But at this point in time, they don't like what you're saying online. The minister signs, you have no recourse. There is no appeal. There is no, and by wiping you off the internet doesn't mean that they just get rid of your ISP, your service provider. It means that you will have no more online banking. You will have no presence on the internet. Bill C-9, the anti-hate speech law. That one is one that should have everybody afraid. Because under Bill C-9, if somebody does not like what you say, and they make a complaint against you, you can be arrested for hate speech. That can be from quoting the Bible to doing what I'm doing tonight. If you do not like it, you can make a complaint, and they can jail you for it. Now, will they jail me for what I'm doing tonight? Doubt it, because we're in the middle of a writ. But I expect that they'll probably do something right on October 20th. But we need to be very concerned about that. Now, that brings us to Bill C-22. Under the Telecommunications Act, if they want to tap my phone lines, they need to go get a warrant. So I phone one of you, and we're having a conversation. They're not allowed to listen in on that phone call unless they have gone to a judge and proven to him that what we're talking about could very well be a threat to either national security or that we're planning a crime. And they have to show evidence of that. Under Bill C-22, they do not need any of that to read all of your internet communications. You do not have any privacy rights on the internet under Bill C-22. And all encryption must be removed by the providers. That is why you'll find that Telegram has said that they're going to be moving out of Canada. You will find that Signal is saying that they're going to move out of Canada, because not only does that open them up here, but by giving their algorithms and their encryption to the Canadian government, that opens up all of their users worldwide to have the Canadian government access. Now that I've made you really paranoid, we're going to take a short break. Before we do that, I'm going to ask Brad, can you pass the bucket around? If you're able to put something in the bucket, that's great. This is funded entirely by people like you as we go around. None of us take a salary. We do get gas money, but that's all that we get. So if you're able to put something in, that's greatly appreciated. And once we pass the bucket around, we'll take about a 10-minute break. We'll get set up, and then we'll do the question and answer. Thank you, and we'll see you in a minute.
All right, guys, we're going to the Q&A session soon. Put the cameras in the right place, make sure everything is up and tidy, and I'll see you in a bit, I guess.
missing our microphone person. Oh, he's coming. Okay. My husband's going to kill me for saying this, because if he's watching. But we had a bit of an argument today, and it was about the difference between hearing someone and listening. So, yeah, I think probably we've all had that argument, but I thought about that tonight, even this discussion, that sometimes we're only hearing each other and we're not listening. I've already got in my mind what I want to say or what I think, and so I'm not giving you the honor and the respect due you to just actually listen to what your opinion is. I'm hoping that now as we go into the question and answer, no matter what the questions are and who's asking, let's just respect each other and just actually listen, because there's going to be people come up and they're going to be on another side from you. But they have something worth saying. So let's just listen, and I'm going to give, if you have a question, please, I'm going to give the mic to Brad. Put your hand up, and he'll come by, and he'll let you have your time on the mic.
Oh, and also one thing in particular about the microphone, because this is live streaming. This whole thing is being live streamed right now. What we're trying to do is we have a format here. If you have something to say, it's very important that you have these things on the microphone. We don't want to do this. Hey, can you do this? Can you do this? Because nobody will hear on the stream. That's one, and two is kind of rude. So if you have something to say, it has to go on the microphone. If you have questions, on the microphone. So, and also for those who are watching online, very important to, if you have questions, just put a exclamation mark and we'll go to questions after you. So thanks a bunch. Who's next? Who's got a question?
You can say anything. It's best to say anything, because lots of us have strange questions. We think they are, but they aren't. So, so I know another young guy the other night in Morinville, he said, no, I'm not talking. And after, towards the end, he come up with a real good question or two. So just something that doesn't hurt. Everybody's got something on their mind.
Yes, no toaster. Oh, lady over there, she's got a question.
I'll have to hold it for you.
Oh, okay. So I think what lots of people that aren't for separation are wondering is what's happening fiscally. All that we hear, all the answers I've got, you said to do research, all that I've seen is, oh, we're not going to be paying the equalization payments. It's going to work out. It's going to work out. But I have not seen any independent economists from the universities, from anywhere in Canada saying, here's the cost analysis benefit. Where is that? I think a lot of people would actually take this more seriously if there was hard numbers of what it's going to cost for a police force, what passports are going to cost, what border patrol is going to cost, what currency is going to cost. All that I've gotten from anyone I've talked to is it'll work out. On something this major, just saying it's going to work out, that's not enough. Any kind of business plan, you would have to have all those steps, all that fiscal stuff. So where is that?
Okay, first off, there is a basic breakdown. Actually, if you go to albertaprosperityproject.com, they've actually done a really good job of initial breakdown in a document called The Value of Freedom. However, that's not the end-all be-all. It's not going to answer all your questions on that one. However, there is a white paper being written right now by Mr. Keith Wilson in conjunction with experts in many different fields that they are coming up with a document. It's supposed to be released in July that will have a complete breakdown of exactly what you said, what the police force is going to cost you, what all of these things are going to cost to initialize them, including the Premier with her $400 billion. There will be offsets to that too, to show the different sides of where the money will be spent and what money will be saved as well. So I know it's not the answer you want entirely, But there will be a definitive answer coming out in July.
I'll also add to that. So the province has commissioned the University of Calgary to start doing a study into this. So if your preferred source would be a university or an establishment like that, that will be coming out in advance of the referendum. So you can check the Government of Alberta's website that is talking about all the questions that will be on the referendum ballots. And once that report is compiled from the University of Calgary, it'll appear on that website.
I can check if I've got a value of freedom in the car, and I can let her glance at one.
Okay.
Anybody else have a question? Yes, no? Yeah. Can I ask a question? Yeah, okay. So one of the questions that I gather from the ground, especially when I talk to people, is about the immigration side of things, especially in urban areas like Edmonton or Calgary. The immigration seems to be a big issue, and as somebody who's been born outside, that's kind of related. I know that Dennis Karma was talking about in this document of freedom, in the document of freedom, he was having a certain way of approaching immigration. So what you're saying is that the document that also from Kit Wilson will address that is only going to address the economic aspect, or many other things aside just economics. Do you have any ideas on that or not?
According to Keith, he's brought in experts from the chief air traffic controller right down to hospital coordinators. So it will cover everything from what will happen with aviation right through to healthcare to immigration. He's brought in experts on immigration. So yeah, it should have a very good breakdown of just about every question people can answer.
So it will be basically the value of freedom on steroids, basically, right?
I guess you could look at it that way, yeah.
If I may, I'd like to be clear on what this referendum is. It's a question if we're going to have a referendum or not. So there will be plenty of time. This is going to take years to resolve, even if this specific referendum favors toward a yes, because we have to move towards, if it is in favor of separating, this current referendum lays the groundwork to start creating a legally binding referendum. So there's going to be a lot of time for us to discuss, have these questions, do additional research. I just wanted to add that.
I can go and start something maybe. Like we have one fellow that comes around here and talks, and he mentions that, like Danielle, she wants to stay in Canada as a sovereign province, but yet she doesn't want to go and start collecting federal taxes, which she should be. And again, with the royalties that we're losing on interest money every week because it sits in a bank in Ontario instead of sitting at credit unions here in Alberta. So maybe you could mention something like that to them.
You're talking about Mr. Ben Trudeau, who is actually not for independence. He is for a sovereign Alberta within the United Canada. We have speakers from different sides come and speak. And I'll tell you that if we could do everything that Mr. Ben Trudeau suggests, I might reconsider my side of it. I do not believe it is possible. In fact, Ben and I are going to actually have a deep discussion on camera one of these days. We've been discussing it of sovereignty within the United Canada versus an independent sovereignty. But I tell you, his book is available at the back, and it is a very good read because he was very deeply involved with both referendums in Quebec. He believes that if we follow Quebec's example, Quebec is the only province that is sovereign within Canada at this point in time. And if we were to follow Quebec's example, we could, and I actually agree with him, we could very well be an independent Alberta within Canada. However, I do not believe that we have the political will to do that. I do not believe that our politicians will take the necessary steps to do what Quebec does. And if they aren't willing to do what Quebec has done to move us towards that, then independence is our only option to get those rights back. Did that answer that, Brad?
Yeah, question over there.
I agree with you, and I think what Ben is saying would work. A lot of people I've talked to feel probably they don't want to leave Canada, but we're not getting treated fairly here. My question, I'm all for separation myself, but I think you'd have more support if we were like going to be like Quebec within Canada, and if we don't get it, then move, further independent. But I don't know. I mean, like I say, I listen to a lot of people that say, I don't want to leave Canada. I don't like what we're getting treated today, but.
And I hear what you're saying on that. And if it was possible, which I do not believe it is possible, then yes, you are 100% right. But it does not, unless our politicians, they keep talking about sovereignty within a united Canada, but they're not taking the political moves to get us to that point. It's all a bunch of talk, no action, because collecting our taxes is one of the very first steps. As Ben says in his book, he believes in the golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rules. And that is where Quebec started from. When income tax was made mandatory in Canada, the very first thing that Quebec said is, okay, then we're collecting it. So we will give to you what you're due, not you give us back what we're due from that. When the CPP was formed in 1965, Quebec said, no, we're not doing that. We'll do our own pension plan. And now my numbers are not going to be exactly right, because I'm going to paraphrase, because that's not my area of expertise. I'm going off of Ben. But they have a third of the amount of people under the Quebec pension plan that is under the Canada pension plan, and their investment fund has more than 3 times the amount of money that the Alberta pension or the Canada pension plan has in it, because they have managed it for their people much better than the CPP has managed it for the rest of Canada. And if you take a look at here in the province of Alberta, the Quebec pension plan owns more land than the provincial government. Cross Iron Mills is owned by the Quebec pension plan. The outlet at the Edmonton airport is owned by the Quebec pension plan. They own many buildings in both downtown Edmonton and downtown Calgary are owned by the Quebec pension plan.
We'll get the microphone,
Londonderry
please.
Mall, correct. Londonderry Mall, there's another mall in Edmonton that is owned by the Quebec pension plan. If we're serious about wanting to be sovereign within United Canada, then our politicians need to step up and make it so. But I don't see them doing that, and I believe that is why independence is our only step forward.
I'd like to add to your question. So one of the challenges we have is that there's grievances underlying why we want to separate. And if you watch debates such as the Jason Kenney debate versus Keith Wilson, they actually both agreed on what all the problems are. And regardless of which way this referendum goes, if we're going to have a stable confederation, we need to talk about the root issues. And because a lot of people aren't very involved in democracy, they don't realize what it takes to get change to happen. And we may find a bit of disagreement on this, but I think that people don't realize how far they can take things. And some people want to go pretty far. And we might be able to meet somewhere. Rather than Alberta being completely separate, we may be able to form something similar to the European Union. Regardless of what happens, we need to start to hold our politicians accountable, and by getting involved in our democracies, we don't have to get frustrated when our politicians aren't doing something when we want them to, and going as far as a referendum on leaving. If we're willing to start getting involved in our parties and have conversations at the dinner table, we can make sure that there's no unaddressed grievances no matter which way this goes. I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit here because it's a fairly balanced crowd is my understanding, and we want to make sure that the discussion is appealing to and resonates with everyone here.
I do disagree a little bit. But actually, not as much as you might think I do. My biggest problem is and I agree with them, you got to get involved in politics at the local level. The problem is in Quebec, they have it mandated in every single party's bylaws and governance that party must follow what its members want. Here in Alberta, we do not have it. Not a single one of our political parties has that. Doesn't matter whether you're on the left or the right. They set their policy at the top in a lot of cases. And any policy that the members come up with is a suggestion. Even within the UCP party, it's made very clear that the policy will be listened to unless it's not, they don't feel it's in the best interest of the government. In Quebec, it's mandated in their bylaws and governance. And that is something that we need to do. If we're going to do what you're suggesting, every party needs to listen to their members before they do anything else.
Just a side note, when Sheane was talking about the Quebec pension plan being that they own the Cross Iron Hill Mills, somebody was actually talking in the comments. It was actually owned by a company called Ivanhoe Cambridge. They saw okay, is that the pension plan? Is that a separate company? Ivanhoe Cambridge is actually owned by the CPP. Is their real estate arm of the CPP? Just a little FYI about that.
Okay, I totally disagree with you that we can actually work this out through our politicians. And basically that's because in order to get what we need from Canada, our equalizations back, our taxes and stuff, you have to open a constitution. And when we're pumping the amount of money that we're pumping into the rest of Canada, do you think we're going to get 7 out of 10 provinces to vote to open the Constitution when there's only 3 out of 10 paying into the equalization payments, and basically BC and Saskatchewan pay virtually nothing? And if Quebec itself added 4 cents a kilowatt onto the electricity they sell to the states and everywhere else, where they have the lowest electricity rates in Canada, if they put their electricity rates up 4 cents, they would basically lose $8 billion of equalization. That $8 billion, if they should do that, none of it would return to Alberta. The number one province would get $2.085 billion, and that's Ontario. The rest will go to the Maritimes and Manitoba. And possibly Saskatchewan might get a chunk. But there is no way you're going to change the Constitution when that amount of money is sitting there. And if you stop and think, like this gentleman here is read The Value of Freedom, and I have several times. If you go through that, it's 44 pages, and it is quite precise, and I know it's going to be used as a starting point probably from all these people, and I'm sure that the guy that wrote it is going to be on one of these committees. It goes through an awful lot of stuff because we already pay for a ton of stuff in Alberta that everybody thinks the post, like the federal government pays, but they pay it with our money. That's like me giving you $20 and saying, you know, pay your neighbor's farmhand, you know, $20 an hour. It's still my money that you're using to pay somebody else. And I think...
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
My argument is not so much that it's my argument. I was talking about Ben's argument. And Ben's argument is that we don't have to open up the Constitution because we can just do what Quebec did, exactly what you're saying. And do you know why their rates are so low? Is because they have taken, and it's illegal in Canada for one government to tax another. And that is why their power is so low, is because they give it back to the people. So they don't, so what they charge for a household in Quebec does not have the equalization formula added to it. So that's one of the biggest things that they save that equalization payment on, is because, so if we did that with fuel oil or natural gas and at the pumps, we would take our equalization payments down big time. I don't agree with him on that, but I'm just giving you his argument. My argument is, why do we have to play numbers games, period? Why should we have to pay those payments in the first place into it? It is socialism at its root cause, to even the equalization payments. Nowhere else outside of communist countries have a formula where one area is supporting another area to bring them up economically. Because all of that does is, you take a look at the four biggest provinces that collect the largest amount per population on equalization. They are, Prince Edward Island is 26%, and down to Newfoundland, which is 23%, and Manitoba is 24%, and I don't remember the rest of the numbers. But you take a look, what incentive is there for Newfoundland to develop their oil reserves that they have when they would lose money overall by having to pay more into the equalization? They might as well leave it in the ground and get it in their for their budget. It doesn't make any sense. But I was giving you Ben's argument for it.
Ties back in with what I was saying earlier during my presentation on equality versus equity. We need to give provinces the opportunity to see consequences of bad policy. And by propping up bad policy, we are subsidizing failure, in a sense. And also back to your earlier part of your question, which was the provinces won't want to enter into a constitutional negotiation. I think that's where this referendum is needed. It may not result in Alberta becoming a sovereign state, and I'll get to that. I think it's good that you're raising this point, and I think that's why you and everyone else that understands this needs to work to communicate that with other people. Because a lot of folks don't understand that Canada's not going to be willing to negotiate this unless we are serious about leaving. I think we're in an abusive relationship, and if you're not going to actually put your foot down, the other party isn't going to want to meet you in the middle because they won't take you seriously. So that's why I think we do need to, that's why I believe I want to vote in favor of this referendum, to have a referendum. And the big threat that this poses to Canada, with the intent of potentially saving Canada, is the unilateral declaration of separation if the other parties don't act in good faith. And this ties in with the Quebec referendum succession ruling that the Supreme Court made, their opinion piece on it. If we're prepared to make a unilateral declaration, and another country is willing to recognize our independence, Canada realizes that we mean business. And then maybe they will be willing to open up this constitutional question in order to save Canada. Sometimes you need to have arguments. You have to escalate to de-escalate. And that's just how negotiations work, in my life experience.
Well, you know, I kind of don't agree with you in terms of a little bit of that, and part of that is Ontario and the East needs Quebec to win elections. They don't need Alberta at all. And one of the reasons they treated Quebec like they did when they were trying to leave Canada was because they needed their votes, because they didn't want the West to control anything. And you're going to see a lot more vitriol towards Alberta leaving than you will ever have seen when Quebec was. And the people that said, you know, Quebec tried to separate and everybody left Quebec, all of the big companies left Quebec. Well, Quebec had nothing to offer, plus they had an absolutely brutal French language laws that big companies didn't want, because they couldn't bring in the best and the brightest unless they spoke both languages. That's why that issue is argued out, that all of a sudden Quebec was in a bad way because they voted for independence. But the truth of the matter is that they had an awful economic environment and a brutal language law. I have friends in Quebec that had businesses, and it was hideous. But Alberta, on the other hand, if we leave, companies will come here because we'll have the best tax situation in the world, on top of the fact that I think when everybody gets done all their financial digging, they're going to find that it's a big plus, money-wise, for us to leave. And I don't think people should be putting so much effort into the money. They should be putting a lot more effort into understanding the culture that the East is forcing on us, the taxes they're forcing on us, because just simply something like the carbon tax makes our oil uncompetitive. And the sad situation is, when big companies make money, they hire and they expand. When they don't make money, they shut in. And I think people get a little bit lost in some of these big oil companies making a pile of money, but they can also show a pile of losses. We've had oil down at $35 before a barrel, and it's not a fun thing in the oil patch.
No, and I actually agree with you. I do not believe that we should be using it as a negotiation tactic. As far as I am concerned, the reason that I will be voting for option 2 is because I want a referendum, because I believe that independence is our only path forward. I do not believe that to use it as a negotiating tactic with Ottawa. In fact, our Prime Minister made a statement a couple weeks ago that said, you better beware, Alberta, because you may get what you want, or what you're asking for, because he figures that we're using it as a negotiation tactic. When he said that, I went, yes, please. So I do not even consider using it as a negotiation tactic, because they, like you said, because of the difference between the East and the West, and the way the Constitution is set up, so that even if we had the same population, we would not get the same benefits as they do out West. I'll give you an example with the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is set up in such a way that the whole west of Canada is at a disadvantage. So you've got the maritime provinces get one representative. Quebec gets 3 Supreme Court justices. The Ontario gets 3, and all of Western Canada, all the 4 Western provinces and the territories get 2 for all of that territory, which is ludicrous. And they're appointed by the Prime Minister. And they, which hand are you going for?
We'll get the mic. We'll get the mic. We'll get the mic. We'll get the mic.
I'm going to get you going here, but you can be the brightest mind, the best judge in Western Canada, the smartest guy out there. Everybody loves you. If you're not bilingual, you're done. You have no chance of making the Supreme Court.
That is correct as well. There are other things. Let's take a look at our senators. Our senators, Quebec gets 36 senators. Is it 36? No, we get 36. They get, I can't remember the numbers now. But our population, by 2035, our population, it will be equal to or better than Quebec's. But we will never have equal amount of senators as Quebec does. Right now, it doesn't matter how you vote out west. It doesn't matter. The election, the last federal election, do you know what time it was called?
8:09 p.m.
8:09 p.m. What time do our polls close? 8 o'clock. They didn't even have time to get the ballot boxes into the counting room before they had called it. If you were in BC, you were still voting when they called the election. Even if you voted for Carney, which I wouldn't admit in most rooms in Alberta, but even if you voted for Carney, your vote didn't count. Nobody cared because it already had decided who was going to win. In the Senate, all but 15 of the senators were appointed by Justin Trudeau. So even if the Conservative government had won, it wouldn't matter because the Senate can defeat. So it's a losing battle, and the chance of opening up the Constitution is nil to none. In order to open the Constitution, there's only one person in this province that can request the Constitution be opened, and that is the Premier. Once the Premier does a request out, they have to get a call back from 7 of the 10 provinces with 51% of the vote. That means that in order to get it to open up, you have to have either Ontario or Quebec in the mix. And one of those has to agree. So let's say they get that done, and you get them to come together and open up the Constitution. So then you go and you have a negotiation session. And let's say by chance that 7 of the 10 provinces with one of Ontario or Quebec agree to the terms that you come to in there. It then has to pass the House, and then it has to pass the Senate. Neither the House or the Senate are going to pass it. And if it does get past the House, the Senate will just turn it back. But let's say that by some great miracle that all happens. Guess what? Quebec has a veto. So they'll just veto it right away.
Well, to add to your comments about the Senate, it's not just the Senate where there are legitimate grievances. So in the House, Quebec has a fixed floor number of seats. No matter how far down their population goes, there's a minimum number of House members that they are entitled to. And there's similar rules for the Maritimes. And that results in increasingly more unfair representation of the East versus Alberta and other Western provinces. So this is something that should be answered via a constitutional question. And I mean, I already made a devil's advocate comment earlier, and we don't want to go in circles on this. So, yeah.
I have to hold it, otherwise you'll be hurt.
Okay, thanks very much. I have a lot of issues, so kind of stay with me. Okay, so first of all, let's just talk about the referendum and going there. So your numbers, where do you think you're at? Like, so I've heard polls earlier on, and maybe 20%, and now I've heard you could be up as high as 40 getting to there. Okay, but okay, realistically, like, by the way, I agreed with both everything you said tonight. It's all good, and all your complaints. But okay, so 20 to 40, and I've heard some of them say, well, we know we're not going to win, but at least we're going to send a message to Ontario. But I'm very afraid of the fact that the message that we've kind of become. I watch Bloomberg and a lot of the financial TV programs, and we've kind of become a laughing stock. The day that Smith said we were voting for the referendum on top of a referendum, I mean, they were really honestly laughing at Alberta. So, okay, so back up a bit, 20 to 40%, and I've heard a lot of guys say, well, we just want to send that message. So what's the percent of people that are for separation that really want to just send a message to Ottawa that we're mad? Yeah, what do you think is the number there? I'll let you talk.
I think it's lower than what you would think it is. I think the percentages would be in the single digits of people that just want to send a message. And if you go by the latest polls, there was a poll that was conducted by Main Street polling for Jason Levine, and that has it at 40.9% hard independence right now. Now, if you take one that was done by Rebel News that specifically went to and talked to Aboriginals, they're at 46% hard independence. The numbers, I do not believe that we're just going to send a message. I honestly believe it is winnable, especially the question that is coming up that is being given to us, because even if you're on the other side of the issue, all of that question is doing is giving us the democratic voice to be heard. That is what the question that is coming on option number 2 is. Do you believe that we should have a binding referendum on the issue? And I believe that is very winnable as a question for sure. As far as the people that just want to send a message, I do not believe it's very high at all. The people that I talk to night after night after night after night in these town halls, we've done almost 200 of them at this point, and they are, for the most part, 100% want to become independent.
So then, the other day they were talking to a group of businessmen in Calgary, and they said that they're already figuring they're losing 162 million, I think the number was. All these numbers are all taken out of context. But anyway, you've mentioned Quebec lots of times. They lost, the Bank of Montreal moved out of Quebec. There was a tremendous downfall. Like any business wants to have consistency, or they want dependability. And they're not getting that. And the scare or referendum, okay, if in October it goes to a no, that the majority does want to stay in Alberta, are you guys going to be happy then? Or, I mean, unhappy enough to say, okay, we're going to leave it alone? No, it's 100% no. The answer is, you don't even have to answer it to me, because we're dividing the province again and again and again. So we've divided it and now Smith Smith was never my fan, by the way, but that has nothing to do with anything. So just about didn't get elected last time, but it was the rural vote that got her in. Okay, so that's not an argument. It was the rural vote that got her in. But now she's pissed them off now too, pissed the separatists off. She kind of had a lot of them on her side to get her in. Okay, so now are you worried that the split from Alberta, now nobody likes Smith, so it's opening up to kind of what you said, like the left, and yeah, like the NDP are going to walk all over her next time, I find. And that's not
Actually, I don't agree with you.
Oh, I understand that. Okay, so
No,
that's
but going
fine.
back to what,
We'll
like,
just-
no,
I'll just
no,
get my
you
point.
had, you said your thing. I want to answer
Okay.
this next one. First off, Quebec did not, the companies that left Quebec did not leave Quebec because of the referendum. 100% did not leave. The economists showed that they left because of Bill 101. That was the number one reason why companies left Quebec. Bill 101, just for the record, is now on its 5th iteration to the Supreme Court of Canada, and it has been defeated at the Supreme Court of Canada 4 times and is now in front of them for the 5th time. Bill 101, in case anybody doesn't know, is the French-only language law. That is the number one reason cited by all companies leaving Quebec, was Bill 101. Here in Alberta, would we have an economic downturn after a successful referendum? You're right, you might have, but it would be very short term. And the reason it would be short term is because we have resources that Quebec does not have. We have the oil, we have the minerals. The minerals that, by the way, the federal government will not let us have access to at this point in time. We have the 4th largest lithium deposits on the planet that we could go after the same way we go after oil and gas, with drilling rigs, the same drilling rigs that they use. We could go after the lithium without doing what they do in other countries where they have open pits and it's a disgusting thing, but we're not allowed to. The federal government will not let us go after those natural resources. Those natural resources that we have here, like I said, are 4th largest, things like lithium. Companies will be begging to come in to get those resources when we can control access to them. I do not see that there will be a long-term economic downturn from independence. Short-term, yes, you're right. You might have it short-term, but you're not going to get it long-term.
Let's tie back into the earliest part of your question, which mentioned polling. So Brexit was quite an upset, and so was the 2016 U.S. election. And I believe you had mentioned something about the recent Calgary Chamber of Commerce polling. That was only a 0.24% response rate amongst those surveyed. So it's not a very large polling, and it's not a large enough sample size to really say that it's an accurate picture based on that. So I don't think we can know from any free poll where things actually lie. And that's why we need to start having conversations with each other and talking more, because by us talking with each other, we can figure out where our communities are at. And your next point that I recall was about if this referendum does not go in the favor of separation, that separatists won't go away. And that's true. I agree with that, because the grievances that both Kenny and Wilson both agree on are still there. There's still the issues of equalization payments, improper representation of the Western provinces, and those will continue to remain. So the question becomes, how bad are Albertans willing to let it get before they start to really take this seriously? And that's why we need to have these conversations, to realize we got to start doing things now and be willing to talk about this. Otherwise, we're going to kick a can down the road, and things are going to get a lot worse.
I'm just going to mention something, if I may. This gentleman was talking about inconsistency. and, you know, with us becoming independent. But under Carney, it's very, very inconsistent in this country, especially for the West right now with the things he does. So just something for people to think about.
Okay, also then the CPP, I totally 100% disagree with you on CPP. I don't know if you're jealous about the pension plans of Quebec, but like there's lots of pension plans out there. The Ontario pension plan, the teachers' pension plan is doing very well. The Canada pension plan is actually doing amazingly well now. In '95, we didn't look like it was going to get ever. It's also using malls and hard assets, and it's doing very well. I have the numbers on them.
Well, your numbers are wrong because I can give you the numbers that show otherwise.
Okay,
Because,
what do you think the CPP is doing right now?
okay, I'll tell you. Here's one exactly that as of this year, and this is from the Government of Canada themselves, as of this year, the CPP investment fund is actually starting to run on a deficit. That means that by 2035, there will be nothing left in the investment fund. I can show you the numbers. Pull it up on the Government of Canada website. Oh, it is 100% right. Yes.
Okay, and okay, that was the pension plan. Okay, so if we separate, of course, then of course Smith wants us to have our own pension plan, which she's kind of went off on before. What do you think the numbers of the total pension plan? Maybe it's going to be non-existent anyway, but like she wanted 58%, and even though I think we were more like 16 is what some of the guys were saying, 16% of the pension plan that Alberta would get. She wanted 58% of it. What do you know? What's real? What do you think is realistic?
Frankly, I don't care if we get any of it. Quite honestly, it would be nice if we did. But according to the agreement made in 1965, we get, based upon what we've overpaid, which we have overpaid every year since, we get back everything that we overpaid that hasn't been paid out, according to the agreement made in 1965. But you know what? Take that totally off the table. It's all gone. I don't care, because by what we overpay right now, within 30 years, because by the law, if we set up our own pension plan, we are required to have as good or better system than the CPP. We cannot just willy-nilly say that we're going to do this, this, and this. It's already set up in law how we have to do it. So if we do that, and using the same formulations that we're using right now with the CPP, within 30 years, the Alberta pension plan would be 100% self-sufficient. Right now, it's the world's largest Ponzi scheme, because if you're collecting today, it's the youth that are paying for it that you're doing it. So the world's largest Ponzi scheme.
You mentioned into the real assets. You mentioned the malls that Quebec is going to. And all those kind of things, and that's what they're going into. So I'm not saying that there's less people, more people taken out from the thing and less people coming in, because there's less people working nowadays.
Except in Alberta. Alberta is the only population in Canada where we actually have more people joining the workforce than leaving the workforce. The rest of the country, it is a downward spiral from where it is. So as a province, if we were, okay, take independence right out of the picture for the moment. Just on the pension plan, by our overpayments of $3 billion per year, within 30 years, we would be a self-sufficient fund. And the numbers don't lie. That's without any investment at that point. But the Canada pension plan has lost money. They have a return of 1.4% on the Canada pension plan. If I invest in the teachers union, they've got a good pension plan. If you take a look at the Quebec pension plan, they have a return of 13 to 17%. Canada pension plan is not the great investment strategies that you say. Do you realize how much money on bureaucracy is spent in the CPP? In 2010, there was a total of $1.5 million spent on wages. Do you know what it is now? $1.8 billion. It is a totally saturated system. And it needs to be totally redone, because unless we do our own pension plan, it is going down. As of 2026, the investment branch of it is drawing out of there, and it is on a deficit. And that fund, it can never go broke because the government guarantees it. But the investment fund can go away, and that is slowly disappearing as of this year. The numbers don't lie. I'm showing you it is not making what you think it is. Even with making 1.9% on it, the fund itself is pulling out of it faster than it is going into it as of this year.
I'm just going to say, I think, referring to what Ben says, there's approximately 700 billion in the CPP, with about 22 million people drawing and putting into it, where the Quebec plan has about 500 billion, so we're only talking 200 billion, their difference, but they've only got 5 million people, I believe, on it, so the value per person is a lot better with the Quebec pension plan.
I think Max has something to say too.
You got a question, Max?
Not to mention that Mark Carney has actually, and the federal government has basically using what's left of the CPP money into the federal asset bank. So basically, Mark Carney is robbing you blind.
Well,
What about it?
To straighten out exactly what he's saying there is the federal government is by law not allowed to touch the CPP. However, as of his first budget that he released last fall, the CPP was listed as an asset. The first time in history that the pension plan was listed as an asset and a guarantee within the budget. So that means if they defaulted, if the federal government defaulted on the money, they would take the money from the CPP. That is not supposed to be allowed by law, that they're not supposed to be able to do that. But yet they do that in the last time's budget. This is the same thing that Mark Carney did in the UK. He did the same type of thing in the UK, and look at their economy now. And it is directly attributable to his term as the Governor General of the Bank of England. And he's doing the exact same thing with our economy by taking things like, another good example of what he used as a guarantor in that same budget, the Indian Fund. That is nothing to do with taxpayers or anything. That is the resource money and the like that comes from the reserves. It has gone in since before Canada was a country. It has gone into a fund that's supposed to be for making life better on the reserves. But he used it as a guarantor in that budget, the same thing. He's not supposed to do that. It's against the law, and yet he did it. And it is, if I was a native, I would be totally upset over that one, because that is not money that is supposed to be touched except to make life better on the reserves for them. And just things like that just continually, he twists the law, and he's got no accountability on them.
I agree with that too. Okay, going back to Ashley's first question about the cost of separation. Okay, so Smith did come up and did mention, I think you mentioned that 400 million was her...
400 billion.
Was her number?
You're right.
Yeah, okay, so I really appreciate that you said that in July, which we're coming right up on, that they're going to do a study and they will they'll put out their own number of what they think it's going to be worth and rebut that 400 million. So I take it it's going to be less than that 400 million is what you
Actually, I don't think it will be.
Oh, you think she's pretty close on that 400
But the problem is they don't give the other side of the ledger. Yes, it'll cost 400 billion, but what is the savings that'll be coming into that we don't have to put out at this point in time? And if you take a look at that, and from the numbers that I've seen crunched, and I'm not going to give exact numbers because we'll wait for the white paper to come out, but the vast majority of that is covered in the savings that come from leaving Ottawa. It's things like not having the overpayments on equalization, not having the overpayments on CPP, not having, there are a lot of those type of expenses. Having more open markets across the border. Right now, we could sell just almost any oil that we could produce. There's a market for it. But as an example, Germany came to Alberta last year and said, we want all of this natural gas. Well, they turned around and said, no, we're not allowing you to put in a pipeline to do it. Okay, so how do we get it to Germany? So what did Germany do? They went to the United States, and the United States is supplying them with that natural gas. So just things like that we could, our economy will come up from things like natural gas sales and having the pipeline. And people use the example that, but we're a landlocked country. Okay, I could see it in your eyes. Okay, we're a landlocked province right now. So we are responsible to the federal government to allow us to get to Tidewater. However, as a country, we have the rights under the international law, which gives us access to Tidewater. Under the United Nations laws of the maritime, all countries have to be granted access to Tidewater. So you take a look at Europe. How do you think that Switzerland gets their product to the shore? It's because there are laws that say that they must be granted access. So you take the Trans Mountain Pipeline. If we were a country, there would have been no question about that pipeline going through because the law, international law, requires it. Now that that pipeline is in place, people go, well, BC won't allow it. Well, you know what? That supplies them, without that pipeline supplying the ports and the like in Vancouver, they have 3 days supply of reserves. So if they don't want to negotiate with us, then we just don't ship to them. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, so I agree 100%. We need that pipeline there, but we've pissed off so many people. We're pissed off the First Nations. We've pissed off BC, and we've got to get investors that are confident that this is a country or not.
Let me answer the first part of that first.
Yeah. Okay. Go.
Okay, we have not pissed off the First Nations. You're absolutely wrong on that. We have pissed off a bunch of chiefs. We have already got agreements in place right now to hit the port of Rupert. Prince Rupert Port. We have got the access through the tribes with negotiating with the tribes along the way. We have got a full corridor all the way to that port. Don't need BC for it. Don't need anybody. We just need the reserves, and we got that. The federal government won't let us put it in. We have already negotiated. We've negotiated right-of-ways all the way to Churchill through the First Nations. And what it did is we would bring them in fresh water, we would bring them in internet, we would bring them in highways, all the way up there for access to, so it's a win-win for both parties. Once again, because it crosses a provincial boundary, you need to have the federal government sign off on it, and they refuse to. So no, we have not pissed off anybody but a bunch of chiefs, because we have negotiated with those tribes and have got things in place that we could have access. So that argument, I'll let you continue, but I had to answer that one.
I'm good. No, I'm great.
I was just going to say.
Oh, you got another one in the back there.
And not to mention that lots of canvassers were essentially Métis as well too. So they're equally mad at the situation as well too. Just FYI.
So this is going to be the last question, just because of the time.
All right. So I can see Alberta separatists, they're upset. You gave us a history of everything the federal government has done to us, which, I mean, yes, it's been a lot. And you also talked about, how this is an emotional thing. There's, you mentioned a couple of people before that had passed away. And so I want to know, why are the Alberta separatists not getting upset with Daniel Smith taking away millions of dollars to the most vulnerable people in Alberta, people with disabilities and handicaps. We've already had one suicide because of the changes happening in just a few days. I'm on a lot of the support groups for that. I can tell you there's going to be more if this continues. So your referendum that you're pushing, I know some of you are saying that you want to push it to have a conversation with Ottawa, some don't. But this referendum is going to cost $120 to $130 million. That money could be helping the most vulnerable people in Alberta. So is the Separatist Party just not going to care about, sorry, is the Separatist groups, are you yourself morally okay taking money away, taxpayers' money away from vulnerable people? Or are you going to fight for those people to get wages that are above the poverty line?
I'm going to go first because I'm one.
Because right now, what AISH is giving is below the poverty line. So can you tell me?
First off, I'm on AISH.
Okay.
How much is AISH now?
Depends. It can be up to 1940.
But one has nothing to do with the other, and it doesn't. That money that she took out of there was not about the referendum.
Sorry, no, but I'm saying like I've read that if the vote goes forward to have a referendum, that taxpayer money will be $120 to $130 million. But Daniel Smith keeps saying, oh, we don't have the money to help these people. So I'm just asking you, will people that are for Alberta separation, will they try and help those most vulnerable people?
And our philosophy among most of us is no one left behind. So if they are getting a program now, whether it be provincial or federal, after separation, we have to take care of them. There's just no ifs, ands, buts, or whys about it. But to say, well, you're taking 120 million from no, you're not taking 100 million from the disabled people in the province. That money is taxpayer money, yes, but they would have found something else to spend it on. I do not buy the argument that there is not money to help the people. I do not agree with the $9 billion deficit. I don't agree with those because I know that the vast majority of it is spent on unneeded stuff. So it has nothing to do with the referendum. But do I want to see handicapped people and the like suffer? No, I don't. But they're not equal. One is not taking from the other just to have it done, just from my point of view.
My understanding is that some of the changes to AISH was also to mitigate exploitation of that system. And another thing I want to tie back to is our talking point on empathy. So there are charities and private organizations that can also provide support to these groups. And the question is, do we want to do it through a social security safety net type approach or a free market approach? And a lot of the separatists, a lot of the people that support independence take more of a free market approach. And this high level ties in with equality versus equity. I think by having a system where we have a more free market approach, we're able to better address the needs based on the value of the dollar rather than a central planning system.
I get what you're saying, but I understand what you're saying, and in theory I agree with you. But we have to make sure that if we are going to go and become independent, at least to start with, until you can find a solution, we have to make sure nobody is left behind. We have to keep the same programs in place, whether it's a federal program, whatever, and make sure that everybody is taken care of. The last thing we want is to lose the federal programs and we decide that those people aren't worth it, so we just let them float in the wind. No, that's not what the goal of this is. We want everybody to come along with us. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I think we had a good conversation, and not everybody agreed, but I'm really glad that you were able to come out. Thank you.
And tomorrow in Oyen as well.
Tomorrow in Oyen will actually be a very interesting one. So if you feel like doing the hour and 55 minutes down to Oyen, I have two of you remember in my speech, I was talking about the dirty dozen. I have two of those gentlemen that will be telling their story of what they went through to beat the Canada Wheat Board. It'll be less of our independent stuff tomorrow night in Oyen, and more about the federal government and what they've done. Just because those two gentlemen are going to tell their story of what they went through to get rid of the Canada Wheat Board. Once again, thank you all for coming. Oh, and if you could help put chairs in the like away, that'd be greatly appreciated, as the quicker that we get them all put away and cleaned up, the quicker we get out.
So thank you very much for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow in Oyen, guys. That will be interesting to see.